Welcome to Debating Dating, a podcast with me, Rachel Graham.
And me, Marc Jennings.
We're two single friends, and every episode we'll be discussing our differing perspectives on an aspect of modern dating.
We'll be sharing our honest insights and experiences as platonic pals who are not afraid to give each other the unvarnished truth.
Or laugh at each other's bullshit.
So, this week we are talking about one-night stands. That's right, it is time to discuss this subject. We're going to be struggling for experiences, Rachel. I think, No, we've got a lot to...
We've got a lot to fit in, haven't we?
We've certainly got a lot of experience to draw upon, I think, on this particular subject.
We are actually experts this time, Mark.
Yeah, this is the one thing we actually know a thing or two about, if you ask me. But yeah, one night stand. So, I mean, obviously we have delved into it over the course of the episodes. We've brought up these things. But thought specifically we would dedicate this week's episode to that particular topic, tackle it head on, and discuss a wee bit about the sort of nature of it in a more direct way.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting as well. So this is embarrassing already and we're not even a minute into the podcast, but I have a list. So
Oh my God.
Yeah.
A list of what?
A list of my one night stands.
So you've literally got fucking notches on your bedpost?
Yeah.
You misogynist.
It's called my Boom City list.
Oh my God.
And I've just written it down. But I've written it down, right, because I want to be like a glamorous old lady who like can look back on the times where, you know, I actually could have sex back when I was in my prime. And
now is that time, Rachel.
I know.
It's the time to do that. So can I just clarify, right? So you say
Yeah.
you've got a list of your one night stands.
Yeah.
Do you mean a list of everybody you've ever had sex with, or just one night stands?
Yeah, well, that's the interesting thing, isn't it? So it's everybody that I've slept with, but then that's the question of like, are we talking about the one night stands? Are we talking about casual things, or why do you think that's weird?
Yeah, I think it's weird as fuck, right? Like, 'cause so presumably you would have obviously started this, you know, when you were a teenager, whenever you first started.
Yeah.
But why have you kept it up? And
Well,
I mean, can I ask you, what are you recording this? Is it in a notebook? I imagine it's, you know, must be quite a lengthy.
okay,
you know,
well,
there's
you
a
don't
lot
know,
of pages
you
in
don't
that.
know. No. I will not be disclosing any real information in this, but
Okay.
it's just a note on my phone. But I think just basically, I think it was it must be when I broke virginity, I was like, oh, I should write it down. Or maybe it was my first one night stand and I was like, oh, I bet you when I'm old I'll forget this, so I'll write it down. And then I started writing it down, and then I didn't want to stop writing it down because I'd already kind of started it.
Right.
And then I thought, well, I might as well just keep going. So
if you have a one night stand, you still go to the effort of the fucking next morning, walk of shame,
not
which we'll get into later, being like typing your phone, yep, Jimmy McKay, there you go. Another one.
Do you know what I do is I write their name, and then I'll write something to remind myself of like a thing, like a nickname or like a reminder of their person. So like I'll say like so and so, then I'll say the year, and then I'll say like arsehole or doctor or whatever.
Arsehole doctor.
Arsehole doctor, or an arsehole doctor.
So
very skilled.
That's so interesting, right? Because see if you heard a guy done that, what would you think? You'd think that's so misogynist, that's so,
but
you know,
you're
immature.
Well, it is immature, but you're putting on that it's like I'm like rating them, or that it's to like.
Well,
brag
you're leaving
about
comments
how
saying they're
many.
an arsehole to be.
Well, I usually do that years later if I like go out with them, and then I'm like, oh, they were an arsehole, but I wouldn't write it at the time.
Is that a wee strike through in their name?
No, but it's because honestly I was writing it down because I think it must have been when I was maybe like 20 or something, and I'd had like a couple of one night stands, and it was like a new experience. I'd never had it before, and I remember being like, oh my God, like this is so exciting, and I thought I should write it down, so I just did it, and then I just kept doing it, and now I just still have it basically.
I see. So notches on your bedpost has been replaced by names on your iPhone notes.
It's a beautiful modern day tale.
Here's my question, right? Have you ever added someone's name to the list before you have actually slept together? Have you ever, the guy ever went to the bathroom after a couple of drinks on a date and you went, this is happening, add them to the list before you forget, like.
No, because I'm superstitious, so I think if I wrote it down, it wouldn't happen.
Walk in slipping a banana peel or something with that.
Pure inane, like, damn it. No, can I just say,
fate again.
I realise this sounds really, really lame, but it's more that thing of, when you start something and you're like, I might as well just keep doing it.
Yeah.
But I would say, like, honestly, it's not the day after. Like, it'll just be that I'll, like, live my life, it'll happen, and a couple of months will go by, and then I'll go, oh, I'll need to add that to the list. And obviously during lockdown, I was like, well, completed it all. Like, I know that nothing else is happening, so I was very up to date this year.
Can I ask you as well, so do you see with the names, do you like have a sort of number at the top that you update every time there's a new one?
No, I don't count the number because I don't think the number should matter.
Right, just the names.
Just the names.
And a list of them all. But the number, no, I'm not counting them.
I'm not counting them. I'm not a loser.
I'm just listing them. That's interesting.
It's just literally the names, and it's in order of like the years. But I think it's interesting to look back on, but I don't think that the number should matter.
Here's my thing with one night stands, right? And say if somebody was to look at your list, right, and they would be like, perhaps, right, I'm not saying this is the case, but perhaps they would go, oh, that's quite a few names there, okay?
I don't know what you're talking about.
People can be quite judgmental about the fact, right? So see whatever your number is, if it's a bit higher than, the average, I think the average is maybe like 7 people or something like that, right? Which means there's a lot of people...
7.
Yeah, there's a lot of people having fuck all, and there's a lot of people, really making up the numbers. Like, yeah. But the thing is, right, for me, like, I've been single most of my life, right? I've been single more often than I've been in a relationship. And so, yes, maybe I've been with a few different people, but it's not like I've been having more sex than somebody who's just been in a long-term relationship for that amount of time. Because for one thing, it's like more sporadic, right? So, it's feast and famine, isn't it, when you're single? you get it a lot, maybe, when you're having fun, and then there's periods of time when you go with it for a long time. Yeah. And it's like, so I just sort of think that's like, just because, I've been having, the same amount, if not slightly less sex than someone in a long-term relationship, it just happens to be that when I'm having it, it's not always with the same person. And is that so wrong? What is really wrong with that?
I totally agree. And then, when you're in a relationship and you're having sex all the time, I would have that thought often of being like, I've had so much more sex with a partner than when you're single. So why is there this branded thing of being like, oh, like mad shagger? Did I tell you that my flatmate, when I first moved in, thought that my nickname was Shagger because so many people had texted me being like, all right, Shagger. And I was like, oh, so-and-so was like, all right, Shagger. And she was like, yeah, but that's your nickname. And I was like, that's not my actual nickname. And she was just like, but why does everyone call you it? And I was like, oh no, I need to stop.
You're like, well, you're going to find out once I've lived here for a couple of weeks.
Introducing me.
I suppose the counter argument to that, and a lot of people in relationships would say, it's like, yeah, that's true for a while, and then it really tails off, and then we wish we were out there having... And I feel like there's a bit of an insecurity, I would say, in both parts, right? Because see, when you're in a relationship and, you're a bit insecure because like, oh, that person's out there shagging about and all that sort of stuff, and I'm not doing that, and maybe I couldn't do that or whatever. But also from the part of you, if you're single and you're out and you're having, one night stands, and they may or may not be a bit fulfilling, but you look at somebody in a relationship and that makes you insecure because you're like, like, I've not got a partner, but I'll make up for it by shagging everybody that's going. Do you know what I mean? So like, there's a sort of thing of like, the grass is always greener, basically, isn't it? But we'll get into all of that later on, and I think what we want to do is have a look at one night stands, the good and the bad, but certainly don't judge it. What we want to do is like normalise it. That's the phrase everyone always talks about. I think it should be normalised. It has been normalised, but some people it's not that normal for still. But I think it should be.
I think the culture has been normalised, and it's like everyone kind of knows that people have one night stands however many or for however long. But I think there's like a cap. So it's like that thing of like, I think Love Island has like this thing where it's like you find out someone's number or something, and it's always that thing of like, it's all fun and games, and then you find out someone's number is a bit too high, and then it's like, I can't believe you would do that. And it's like, you can't believe that they've slept with other people, so they've had sex with other people before they've even met you, and however many it is, that's like now a huge problem in the relationship. And it's like, nah, that's absolute bullshit. And yet so many people watch that program and go, yeah, well, I'm just this pure angel and I can't believe this. And it's like, just because you're choosing to have sex with someone doesn't mean anything about your personality. Like, it's that kind of branded like slut shaming thing of just being like, oh my god, she's a slut. And it's like, what even is that? Like, and are you calling guys sluts? No, you're not. So like, it is such bullshit. So I hope that we can never like get that in the bin.
Totally. And also, like, the thing I've always thought, and I've never asked MD their number because I feel like no answer is a good answer to that question. Do you know what I mean? Like, if it's, you know, if it's fucking 200, you're going like, oh my god. If it's, you know, if it's free, you're going, who are these free fucking people? Let me find them. And if it's zero, that's not very good answer. Honestly, you don't want that.
Yeah, well, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter, and it doesn't say anything. Like, actually, it's funny, I was chatting to my friend that we were going to do this podcast, and she was saying that, like, 3 years ago, we were sitting, and I was, like, showing her my list, and I was, like, really upset, and I was like, oh, like, do you think that's normal? Do you think, like, that's, like... And
she's like, no one should keep these fucking lists. It's ridiculous. I think you need psychiatric help, actually.
No, but like it wasn't even that. It wasn't even like a high number. But I was like quite like early 20s, and I was like that. I was like upset. Like I was like close. Well, maybe not close to tears, but she was like, "Yeah, you were pure upset about it." And I remember being like, "That is so weird because I don't feel like that person anymore. Like I really, honestly, could have, you know." And it's not like it really, really doesn't matter. I don't care anymore, and I don't think that like anyone should really care the amount of people that they've had sex with.
It's funny, I've just got this image of a guy sitting in the pub, like, showing his mate, like, a list with, like, 3 names on it, going, is this normal? It should have been more. I'll never meet anyone again.
But that's the thing, do you not think it's like, you see it in all these films of, like, young guys being told by their dads, go and, like, have loads of sex and make sure...
Sow your wild oats and all that
Sow your wild oats. And it's, like, so celebrated. And then with women, it's like, oh, no, like, no sex for you. And it's, like... Or, like, it's kind of painted to be, like, women don't really want to have sex. And it's only kind of in the... I would say it's only maybe in the last 10 years that people are, like, opening up about, like, chatting about enjoying sex and wanting to have sex. And I think one-night stands is such a fun thing that... we should all be like celebrating it.
I would say that. I would also bear in mind though that in the last 10 years has been since you've been of the legal age of consent, Rachel, so I'd fucking hope that it's only seemed like the last 10 years for you. Otherwise, people have got some questions to answer, I would say. But we're going to get into all of that throughout the course of the episode in a bit more detail once we take a wee bit of a look at the submissions.
Yeah.
So we'll actually just get cracking with that then and get the first submission up. So we've got 4 submissions this week on One Night Stand. So this first one is a situation that I think a lot of people, particularly in their younger days, would be familiar with.
I went home with this guy who lived with his parents, and we're both lying in bed the next morning, and his mum comes bouncing through the door without any warning and says, "Chris, do you know who this belongs to?" She's holding up a navy thong. Then notices me in bed and says, "Oh, sorry, love, the dog must have grabbed it off the floor as I found it out in the garden and it's not in my size." All the time, laughing away to herself.
That is so embarrassing on so many levels. The fact that she's holding the thong is the bit that gets me.
Yeah, that's it. Like, that reminds me though, like, because you told a story a couple of episodes ago about, like, did your mum or something, or was your dad found a condom, didn't they?
Let's not bring this up again, Mark, please. I've had a lot of messages from friends being like, Rachel.
It is always just so awkward though, isn't it? Like when you're living with your parents, when you take somebody back, and like, to be honest, my parents have always been pretty sound about it. Like they've always been just kind of letting me do my own thing, and they've never really like said, "Oh, you can't take people back." You always get that thing. You hear people say, "It's like you're treating this just like a brothel" and all that sort of stuff. Like, they've never said anything and that kind of stuff. And like when I was younger, I would like take people back, and like to the point now when I think back, I'm quite embarrassed. I'm like, oh my god, I can't believe, like, you know, they must have heard everything, and you know, I was so brass about it. I don't know, but like now I would feel embarrassed, but it's mainly because I'm fucking in my 30s, right? But like, but I feel it's always like an awkward one because, like, you know, sometimes you'll need to like you come in the house and you need to walk by the living room and they're there and they always need to meet them and it's maybe the first night you've met and stuff if it's a one night stand. Like, is all that awkward stuff and in the morning, like, because my parents would always be sound about it. My mum would always like they'd always try and like dance around. His mum would always be like, "Oh, so would your friend like a drink or something?" Like if I come down the stairs like in between, like, or in the morning, nice. Was that? How was your friend? Is your friend away and all that kind of stuff? So was your friend like?
That's so sweet of your wee mum trying to make it less awkward for you. The first time I met my ex-boyfriend's sister, she just came into his room and I was like fully naked under the covers with him. And she came in just proper, like open door, like never met her before. And she was like a wee bit younger than me. She came in and she was like, hi, are you Rachel? And I was like, yes, like covering up my boobs basically. I mean, like, yes, it's me. And she was just like, do you want brown sauce or red? And I was like, sorry? She was like, brown sauce or red? And I was like, brown? And she was just like, all right. And then she went away and she like made me like a bacon roll, like a bacon like thing. And but she handed it, I was fully naked. She like hands it to me, like handed me like a cup of tea, and it was so nice. But it was one of those things where I was like, is this the norm? Like, has he been shagging so many people that it's like you just come in and she's like doing it as a favour or something? Like, it was so
right.
Awkward.
So that's usual routine this week. Get the sandwiches ready, cups of tea. Up until really recently, like in our house, you could only put the heating on in my house by coming into my room, like the boiler's in my room, and people used to have to come in and out of my room. So like there was the odd occasion, maybe if I'd slept in and they were either freezing or roasting, my mom would usually just leave us be, but sometimes they would need to come in to change it, and they would just, and you're like, fuck, get the covers over, or, I think they just avert their eyes, I don't really know, but occasionally they would just need to do that, and it was always a bit awkward. But again, my mum was always like trying to be dead hospitable with them, and it's like, it's one thing if it's like your boyfriend or girlfriend that are over and it's like, oh, they want a cup of tea, they want a juice, they want some tea or whatever. But when it's like one night stand and they're like, they're trying to make a big fuss, and you're like, I don't even know her name, alright? Just leave her at and just let me get her out of here. Do you know what I mean? Like that's.
Oh, I hope you're not rushing her out the door.
I know exactly that whole guilt trip. It's like, is that the same girl who was here last week, Mark?
It's like, no, it definitely is not, I think.
Oh.
I think the morning is so awkward because you have to kind of gauge how long they want you to stay, or whether you want to stay, or all that kind of stuff. And there's all that kind of thing of like really kind of gauging whether you want, like I've had times where it was so bad. I think it was my first one night stand actually. And he, in the morning, by the way, all through the night before, like, so he was like, I think I must have been like 19.
It's pretty good for your first one night stand all through the night. Fucking hell.
Well, he was like 24, like we weren't young.
Right.
But he was like 19, and I must have been making jokes being like, oh, like you're so old, like great chat for me, obviously shite chat. So then he, all through the night, he was like, I'm in my prime. And it got to the point where I was like, oh, there's something really like, he obviously feels a bit, I obviously shouldn't have made that jokes all through the night. So like, I'm in my prime. And then in the morning, it was like 8 a.m, and he was like, so the trains are every 3 minutes. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. I'll just fucking leave in the middle of the night. It's not, the sun's not even come up, and I'm pure like walking back, pure standing at the train station in Denniston being like, that was not worth it.
Do you know what, see, to be honest, right, that is one of the things, what I quite like about being single and going on dates and obviously having one night stands and things with different people, is that you do see different walks of life and different, places and people. You meet different people than if you were just with one person the whole time. And it's like, I quite like that aspect of like a one night stands. Like you go back to theirs and all that, and then you're at the train station in the morning, you're going, all right, so this is Rutherglen, is it? I've always wondered.
Yes!
I've always wondered what this place looks like.
I've been in the car with my mum and been like driving through somewhere and like been like, oh yeah, they're nice houses around here. She's like, how'd you know? And I'm like, no reason. I've never been here before.
Just Google Maps is brilliant,
Yeah. Street view inside the house view.
Okay, let's have a look at our next submission here.
Going back quite a few years, I must have been about 19 or 20. I met a guy in a club. went home with him for a ride, done the deed, went to bed. I got up during the night to go to the toilet, went to the toilet, came out of the toilet and bumped into his flatmate on the way back to the bedroom, who I had also shagged. Needless to say, I did not see them again.
Glasgow's a pretty small city, isn't it, sometimes?
Yeah, it's really small. It's so bad if you like go into a pub and there's two people that you slept with, or like you're like, hey, yeah, we're just normal. We're just there's not like a backstory to this. Have you had that?
Well, do you know what crossed my mind one time, right? Because like, right, this sounds bad, right? But have you ever been, and I think this very much sums up our generation. I can't be the only person who's ever done this, right? But
Oh God, I'm
so you know
worried
that
what you're about to say.
no way when you're on dating apps and all that, right? And you just kind of use it sometimes without thinking. You just open it up like you do with Instagram or whatever, right? But have you ever been on like a dating app while you're on another date? Like they go to the bathroom or something like that, right?
Mark.
Right. I know it's bad, right? But one particular time, right, I was in this girl's bed, right, that I'd met up with or whatever. And then just while she was in the bathroom, I was just looking on, no even thinking, right, and I was looking, because it's not as if we're in a relationship or something, I'm just looking at it. And basically, right, I'd met a flatmate the night before, right, and her fucking flatmate came up on my Tinder, and I was like,
Mark.
can you imagine, right, if like I'd swiped right on a flatmate and we'd matched while I was in the flat?
In her bed. The disrespect, Mark Jennings. The disrespect is
I know.
staggering.
Listen, I'm not defending it. I'm just saying, right, it's the nature of a,
disposable
culture
around
dating culture and all that. But also it's just because it's like, I'm not even thinking about it. It's just because you get into the habit of going on checking all the apps and you do that with dating apps as well and then went on. But I was like, could you imagine, right? Because obviously, like, that would be probably the biggest. I suppose it could one of two ways, couldn't it? If that happened, right? You'd either match and she would tell the pal and the girl would go for a nut, quite rightly so, or the girl could match and then jump in and get involved and everybody's happy and then it's a good time.
Come back to the real world, Mark. Please join me back here in reality.
Aye, I reluctantly swiped left just to avoid that whole situation, although the annoying thing was I'm ashamed to say that I did fancy the flatmate more, so I was kind of like, oh,
I knew you were going to say that. Why? You always do this shit. That's terrible. That's awful. Really, really bad. I think you need to, it's, do you know what, like, you're not tied to people, but I do think once you sleep with someone, you do owe them something, especially when it's maybe 10 minutes after you've actually had sex.
It was a wee bit after that, but it was like, I think it was quite clear to both of us it wasn't going anywhere. And also, it wasn't even a conscious thing. It was just literally because I'm in the bad habit of fucking swiping when
swiping away.
Get a minute, spare to, not have the dark thoughts creep in, so.
I know.
So there was definitely that, but obviously it's a different level I don't know what would be more awkward to like for you've already been with a flatmate or to match the flatmate while you're in the flat. I don't know. It'd be pretty.
I mean, you'd get caught because it would literally be like buzzing in the other room,
No, that would be, I tell you what, you think it's awkward trying to get your parents' house? That would have been a fucking awkward getaway, I'll tell you that.
Is a one night stand, does it have to be someone that you didn't know before? Or does it have to be that it only happened once? Do you know what I mean? Because I think that people talk about one night stands when they just mean people that they've slept with like semi-early on, or that it's more of a casual thing rather than it being officially, a random or like a one-off. Because I think that the most fun one night stands are the ones where you're both really in the same boat of it being like a one-off, so you can just completely have a laugh and like enjoy it and just be like, there's no like pressure on top of it to be like, I would actually quite like this to turn into a relationship, or I would like this to turn into something, and like, but I've had that with someone, and I was just like, this is so liberating to just be like, we know exactly that this isn't a thing, so you can just have a laugh and enjoy it.
Well, I don't think there's much confusion about the phrase one night stand. I mean, the clue's in the fucking name. It's
I'm not saying it's
stand.
confusion, but I'm saying like, people use it.
People...
Yeah, but people use it in different ways. Like, I would say that I had a one night stand with someone that I slept with 3 times because it was in that world of being like
You had a one night stand at well, I think the definition is if it's like happens the same night as you meet, I would imagine. I think that's pretty much it, isn't it? It's a one night stand, and then, you know.
But then can you no longer call it a one night stand if you sleep with them again?
No, because you would have people say, oh, well, when me and my husband met, you know, we had a one night stand and then it led to something else. So
yeah,
it's just the specific night. But if it's like, I suppose if the difference is, so if you sleep with each other on the second date, that's not a one night stand because you've met before.
I agree.
So I think it's literally if you sleep with each other on the first time you meet, and then anything after that doesn't change what the initial thing was. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I have a lot of opinions, surprisingly, about about sleeping with someone early on, because I think it's such a minefield, and I have like, you know, hours of conversation with my friends about when is the right time to sleep with someone, and I would like to think in this modern society that it shouldn't matter, so you should be able to sleep with someone whenever you want, early on, or hold off and do it later. I don't think we should be like playing games in dating, and I don't think that we should be like not being authentic and you know, like trying to act all kind of coy and all that kind of stuff in order. And I think it comes from this purity thing that we have with women of being like, women are only the kind of, they're either sexy and they're only good for just having sex with, or they're this pure person that I now respect, and it's like there can't be both. And I really, really believe that we should be able to look at women and just go, yeah, she is someone who is sexual and sexually liberated, and it doesn't matter when she has sex with me. There's such a stigma of, you know, if someone sleeps with someone on a first date or a second date or a third date or whatever, and it's like, oh well, you know, that means that, you know, she's not worth anything, or that you know, that, or it is just a one night stand. And I think it doesn't matter if it is a one night stand or a one off. You still have a duty of care after you've slept with someone, even if you don't want to continue it. Don't pull a face. You do have a duty of care. Yeah, this is my new favourite word.
Oh my fucking god. What fucking
have
shite Instagram account did you read that?
Me and my friends say it all the time. Yeah. But you have a duty of care. Just text. Like, literally, I'm not meaning you have to be like, I'm literally just meaning,
because we'll get into that later on. But
well, I think that if you sleep with someone, even if you don't want it to continue, you just text them. You text them the day of, or you text them the next day, and you just say, like, listen, like, I know we shared this thing, I would like to see you again. Or, I know we shared this thing and maybe we should leave it. So, like, I do think that you should do that. And I do think that women are so judged. And I get like messages on the Instagram all the time, Mark, of girls being like, I don't know what to do. Like, I'm scared that if I sleep with him, he'll be an arsehole. He won't like respect me anymore. And it's that thing of being like, see, if you sleep with someone, it doesn't mean anything. And I think a lot of people are quite sexually repressed, and they're scared of a woman who is very comfortable with, you know, sex and being sexually like free, you know.
Totally. Was a couple of things to bring up there. First of all, we're going to put a pin in that thing about you saying that there's a duty of care, right? And we'll come back to that in a later story that I've got to tell later on the programme.
God,
but
I'm scared.
Yes.
Yes.
What I would say first of all, I do agree with what you're saying in the sense that personally I would never, like, I wouldn't think that, I think a lot of guys go, oh, if she sleeps in your first date, it's no girlfriend material or some bullshit like that, right?
Yeah.
I do not agree with that at all. I actually, to be honest, think, well, I've had several relationships that have started that we've either slept together like on the first night or, you know, just after or something, but like, I think the whole thing about, like, I think when I was younger, it happened a lot more where, you know, you would get the whole, oh, she's making you wait thing. It's, you know, you get to the 3 dates, or even, you know, it has to be 3 weeks or 2 months or whatever. You know, when I think, and suppose when people are young, more of those things, kind of hang-ups and all that kind of are there. So for me personally, I sort of think, like, I used to have this joke as well where I would say, like, I don't like judge, like, a woman, if like I sleep with her on the first date, all I think is like that I'm just, you know, dead suave and smooth, you know, as if I've done, you know, as if, of course, well, you know, she doesn't usually do this, but, you know, of course she's fallen for my charms, you know. But the obvious thing is, like, you know, the reality is, you know, the women are just as wanting to, you know, just have sex as men, and it's like, you know, we think it's some big achievement, and they're like, you know, I just, you know, didn't want to waste the fact that I already shaved my legs or whatever, which was a punchline that I got from you telling me about that. So, yeah. So I would say that definitely, I do not buy into that whatsoever. That whole thing of like, you know, you think any less of the woman for sleeping the first date. What I would say, and this is more like coming from a place of like, I understand why women are often reluctant to do so early on, is because, you know, like it or not, there is a certain shift in the power dynamic when you've had sex, and it's I don't know if power dynamic's the right word, but see that thing you're talking about, the duty of care, that shifts onto the guy a lot more after the sex, because all of a sudden he's quote unquote got what he wanted, right? And then the fear is that he'll not ever speak to you again. So it's like he's got it, and then that's it, and you've been duped, right? I've got a couple of things I want to say about this. I've always thought the similar, right? I think the only guys can really understand that thing, right? Because we don't really have that. It does obviously happen the other way, and again, I've got something I want to talk about with that later on. But I would say, like, the fear that women have regarding, like, they don't want to sleep with a guy because, you know, they're worried that they'll not hear back from him again. I think that's the sort of, you know, other side of the coin for the guy's perspective is like, guys worry that, you know, they'll go on these dates with this girl that's making them wait, and then it never happens. Do you know what I mean? And it's like that, because I always just think, like, because the sort of unlucky in love people, right? If you look at the unlucky in love guys, the guy, you know, that never gets anywhere with a girl, and like the, you know, the unlucky in love women's like the girl who like sleeps with the guy, never hears back from him. And it's like, I used to say this as well, like, because it's an interesting dynamic. It's like, if you ask a guy like, oh, how's it going with this woman, or how's it going with this girl you're dating, and he'll be like, oh, it's alright, but I'm not really getting anywhere. And then what's the woman's problem? It's like, oh, how's it going with that guy? Ah, well, it's alright, but it's not really going anywhere. And that's the dynamic, I feel, is like, and I know it's guys want to go somewhere, and sometimes women want to get somewhere, right? It does flip about, but I feel like that's an interesting sort of dynamic and dilemma in terms of how you know, after sex things shift. Do you know what I mean?
But that's so fucked in itself, because, like, obviously that is, you know, like, I know that you're aware that that's like a stereotype as well, and that's what annoys me, is this presumption that all women want to, like, you know, it to turn into a relationship and settle down and have kids and all that. And it's that kind of thing of being like, oh, as soon as I sleep with her, she's going to want all those things. I know you're not saying that.
Yeah, it's not. It's a stereotype, and I'm certainly not saying it's all the case. But like, would you agree? Like, more often than not, I mean, it's maybe more tendencies, and that's wrapped up in whatever, you know, whatever it is, the patriarchy or biology or, you know, the gender roles, whatever it is. But it's that. You know, it's a real thing that does exist. I do
think it's a real thing, and I struggle as well, because I have been in that situation where I am that girl that you're describing. So, like, I 100% acknowledge that is the reality for, like, a lot of the time. I do think this shift in power is so fucked. Like, it's so fucked to be like, oh, I have given away my power. Like, my power is to be this coy, sexy, like, kind of angelic, but also got this kind of sexy undertone. And then as soon as I, like, choose to have sex, then I am like, you know, all the power is gone to this other person. I just think that it's an intimate act. So, like, even if you have casual sex, you're doing an intimate thing that, you know, whether or not the person wants it to progress into anything, I do think that we need to acknowledge that it is not even that it's a big deal, but, you know, like, that it needs to be respected, and the person needs to be respected in their feelings and all that kind of stuff. So, like, I just think that there is that thing of being like, I'm so against that. I'm so against the idea of it being like, oh, you know, I've like the ball's in his court now because, you know, I let him like have sex with me, you know.
Aye. It's perfectly understandable that it's frustrating, but I suppose the thing is, right, look, guys aren't going, I'm not going to sleep with her because I'm worried she'll not speak to me again afterwards. That does not happen, right? So that is a reality that, you know, whatever the reasons behind it.
Well, there's a lot of biology behind it.
Of course. We don't have that fear, whereas women do, and that is a difference in terms of how things go when it comes to whether or not you have sex or not.
Yeah, and you know, like, I'm acknowledging that like not everyone feels that way, and that, you know, like, I mean, there's been times where I've had like fun casual sex and I've not felt any kind of like draw to be like really close with them or whatever. But biologically, there is a hormone, what happens once you have sex, and is that thing of like a hormone is released that makes women feel like they want to be closer. And, you know, that makes sense evolutionarily of being like, well, if we are maybe impregnated by, this is the real sexy chat. So you know, people are listening to be like getting off on this episode and I'm like, impregnated. But yeah, if you get pregnant, like, you were designed to be able to make sure that our baby survives. And the best way for that is to be like, okay, well, I would like to kind of, I feel a real kind of like sense to kind of hold on to this person and then raise this child. Obviously, we're like hundreds and hundreds of years beyond that, and, you know, our brains aren't there anymore. But there is that hormonal thing, and that's why I think the duty of care is important, especially for women, of just being like, I'm acknowledging that we've had sex and I'm communicating with like what the next step is, if there's a next step, if there isn't. And I think there's that real thing of being like, and also on the flip side, but I'm not excusing it, is there's that kind of thing of like, you know, if a guy comes, like they've I'm trying not to be disgusting, but like they've like given their seed, like, and it's like, cool, I'm done, I'm gonna roll over and fall asleep because I'm exhausted by that. And it's like, there's not that kind of sense of like wanting, I mean, guys want to cuddle, but do you know what I mean, there's that kind of biological thing going on.
Well, I think that the biological thing is a massive factor. That's like that we, you know, there's certain things like what you've just described about, like, you know, women's biology wanting that certain thing, whereas the guys not. And it's like, as we've spoken about it, it's like the guys, you know, want to sow his wild oats. That's sort of almost biologically driven into us, versus the woman who's more like, obviously when they raise a child and maybe wants one guy there to, you know, be the man's role in that. And it's, you know, whereas guys, it's like, you know, we're biologically wired to just go and spread the seed as much as possible, which obviously sounds like you're just trying to excuse the fact, you know, if a guy just fucks off and shags loads of people and all that. But for me, it's like you're saying, oh, my brains have moved on from that. And I would say, like, what I would say is that society moves on a lot faster than biology. I mean, our biology, like DNA and all that, I mean, I'm not a fucking scientist, clearly, right? But it takes thousands of years to develop. So, like, you know, we've just become woke since, 2015, right? Like, it takes, you know, it's going to take a couple of fucking generations for the biology. So it's like, so that's, I feel like that a lot, but like, you know, like, it's like, obviously, like, Guilty Feminist, popular podcast, right? Then where does that come from? Maybe, I don't know, like, I'm certainly not an expert on this, right? But it's like, because you know, you might be biologically wired to desire things that you societally know that you know, is maybe you shouldn't be doing or whatever. And guys, obviously, it's the same for guys in different respects. But I feel like that's the biological thing. While it shouldn't be an excuse for bad behaviour or whatever, there's real biological differences that then determine. Obviously, the different experiences, and why, like, going back to specifically what you're talking about, like, why you get annoyed that, like, guys just think women are all going to want to get in a relationship after the shaggy. It's like, obviously that's silly because, you know, we're in a modern age now, but there is a reason for that fear that's not entirely always irrational.
But what I would say, and I think that it's the kind of thing that I've, you know, when you're talking about like us being woke in the last 5 years,
and maybe that's just me, I don't know.
One or two, Mark.
Give myself too much credit.
You're being too generous there. What I would say about wokeness and what I've kind of learned about kind of just being aware of like the world is that like everything is a spectrum. So yes, we can look at biology, but also you can think that if we're all landing in a spectrum in so many different ways, that there will be lots of people. We shouldn't just be like really binary about it and think, well, you know, women will get that hormone and want to like hug, you know, like that's not a thing. And that's what I think we all need to kind of remember is that like we all land differently on the spectrum. And that's why I think in recent years people get so frustrated because it's like, no, well, actually that doesn't describe me. And like, you know, I love a cuddle. I don't think that's a surprise, but not everyone is like me, and I'm not speaking on behalf of all women, you know. Yeah.
Thank God for that.
I do feel a pressure to be like, have I said all the right things?
Nobody's going to argue with the fact that it's like what I'm saying earlier on. It's like guys generally do not fear that, you know, if they sleep with a girl, that means they're not going to hear back from them. Usually, even if that does happen, and it does happen. We'll be like, well, at least I got to sleep with them. Whereas it's just no the same. Do you know what I mean? And there's some things that aren't the same in terms of the experiences. I think in terms of dating and sex and all that, and that's fine. I think that while it's obviously important to, you know, to not have negative stereotypes and all these sort of things, it's also like. I think it's also important to sometimes acknowledge that there are real differences in terms of the experience that men and women have with dating, you know, particularly dating each other, I would say. And that, you know, that's the kind of part of the point of the podcast is to talk about that and see it from the other perspective sort of thing.
Yeah, and I think that this subject is the thing that I grapple with all the time, and it's the kind of thing that, like, to be honest, I really have an idealised vision of being like, do you know what, like, the amount of people that you sleep with doesn't matter, and when you sleep with them doesn't matter, and people should respect me, and, you know, all this kind of stuff. But I still like agonize for hours over text, and I still have that thing of being like, I don't know when's the right time if I want this to progress into a relationship. Like, I don't want to know when I should sleep with them, because unfortunately the reality is sometimes if you sleep with someone too early, then you think if they fuck off, then you're going, oh my God, it's because they don't respect me. And even though I can disagree with that and have my feminist hat on of being like, well, do you know what? I don't want to be with someone because, you know, I could wait 10 dates and sleep with them and they would fuck off. Or I could wait one date, sleep with them and they can fuck off. So I do understand that with like a logical hat on, but it is that kind of thing of being like, I still agonize over it, and I still have that kind of real worry of me going, because I've got a friend who she will wait she'll wait a month to kiss a guy. So she'll wait a full month to kiss a guy, but guys go crazy over her because, and I do think it is that thing of like they're getting so excited. I know I couldn't do that, because if I like someone, I will want to kiss them, and I'll think, well, why am I wasting my time waiting to kiss someone that I want to kiss now? But what I also have found is I think I had such a positive experience with my ex-boyfriend where he wanted to be with me, and so me sleeping with him on a first date or a second date or whatever, it doesn't matter. And so because I've had that experience and it being a positive experience, I've been like, do you know what, it's that thing of, see, if a guy wants to be with you, he'll make it happen. So he wanted to be with me, so he made it happen. So now I think that because that positive experience happened, I'm like, well, it could happen again. And I just don't really think that it kind of has. And I think it's that thing of me being like, do you know what I mean?
Fill me once, shame on me. Fill me however many times are in those notes. And shame on me, however.
Yeah.
Shame on you.
Yeah. So it's that thing of me being like, well, do you know what? Like, I really don't think it should matter, but I definitely fucking, you know, haven't experienced people being like that since then, you know?
Yeah. Well, there is a thing, I mean, it is a psychological concept that, like, the more you're made to work for something, the more you'll value it. So it's like, so in those fraternities in America, there's like, they have all these initiation rituals, right? And apparently, like, part of the reason for that is because basically, like, if it was easy to get in, you just realise, oh, well, it's not really that worth it, because it's just a lot of guys getting drunk or whatever the fuck they do there. But they make all these initiation rituals, so like in the people's heads it's like, well, I've had to, you know, crawl through, you know, fucking coals or whatever the fuck they make them do, right? But like, so you tell yourself, because I've had to do this and this, then this means the thing that I'm after is value. And so like your pal making them wait a month to kiss, well, I've waited a month to kiss her, so I must, value it. Whereas obviously the opposite is like the one, if you have the one night stand, it's like, oh well, it's easier to be disposable. So I think it's partly kind of human nature, and I think that's true for everyone. But I've always felt guys are quite judgmental about women sleeping about, and certainly sleeping with people like in the first date and things like that. And that comes back to hurt guys as well, because basically if guys were a bit more, because I suppose guys are insecure, that we basically know that women could get sex easier than us if they wanted, right? So because of that, I think that's where a lot of slut shaming and things like that comes from. But the sort of the irony of that is, so because guys put all these sort of put all this negative stuff on women sleeping with people, it then makes women less likely to do it, and therefore guys are going to be less likely to get sex. So it's a sort of vicious circle, exactly. And then so we're kind of hoist by our own petard or whatever you'd say. But I think so. I sort of always am like, I'm quite non-judgmental about what people do with their sex lives and things like that. I think more people should be like that. And because if anything, right, if people like if more women were like more like, oh well, it's not a big deal and I can do what I want and that sort of stuff, at the end of the day it makes my life a lot easier, because then I'm not having to fucking string along for a month before some lassie I'm going on dates with will fucking kiss me. So for guys, just be less judgmental about women, because at the end of the day it's going to work out well for everybody.
Let's just be less judgmental for everyone. Do you know what I mean? Like, judgment and shame is so fucking damaging to everyone. So, like, let's just stop doing it and just have fun.
Well, that actually brings us nicely to our next submission, which is to do with the word you just mentioned, Rachel, the walk of shame.
So I think my most embarrassing walk of shame story was the morning after Halloween, and the night before I'd gone out dressed as a ringmaster. So I was wearing like full on top hat and red coat with tails and fishnets, and I had a whip. And then I went to this house party and met a guy who was dressed as a lion. And yeah, he was kind of firing in early on, and kind of making all these jokes about me, being a ringmaster. But I didn't really fancy him at first, but as I got drunker and drunker, the idea seemed much funnier, so I ended up going home with him, but I kind of regretted it the next day, when I had to walk back to my flat through the West End, wearing the ringmaster outfit still from the night before. But I definitely wasn't the only person having to do that particular walk of shame, so maybe it wasn't quite so embarrassing.
Halloween is the best time to go out and have a one night stand, because you just have your little army of people dressed up.
Yeah.
Just being like, oh, good night, yeah.
See that guy, right, dressed as a lion? See when he seen that lassie dressed like a ringmaster, he must have been like, this
Jackpot.
is the best thing that's ever happened to me. And the fact that is brilliant, that basically just out of the whole thing of like, well, our costumes suit, so we might as well.
It's the universe. It's fate, actually. We've just been put to do this, actually.
That is very funny. I know, like, because that's the thing, because obviously this is a walk of shame. Is a big thing, and I suppose obviously it's never more obvious than the night after Halloween. If you're coming back dressed like fucking Ali G or Buzz Lightyear or some shit like that.
I mean, the walk of shame, the phrase shouldn't exist, because don't you think it's got that idea of like, I feel like they're just saying women who are still in heels and dresses.
For guys,
how do you know?
For guys, it's the stride of pride. You're walking down going, yes, come on.
But we should have the stride of pride too.
I agree with it. I had that like epiphany one time, right? I'd slept over at this girl's house and she lived in the city centre, right? So I was walking back through the city, and it was like during the week because I was a student at the time, and I was walking back through the city centre, like fucking 8:30 the next morning. And I'm walking through the city centre, and there's all these people all rushing about, with their suitcases and, their shirt and tie and their suits, and everybody's looking all stressed, right? As I've just came for, kind of like nice wee night of shagging, right? And I'm just like wandering back, student life and all that stuff. And I'm looking at these people and I'm going, like, I mean, like, as a guy, you're in a pure state of zen after sex of just like, I'm like the fucking Dalai Lama, like, and I'm just like, oh, everyone just needs to have sex and chill out. Why are you so stressed, man, with the suitcase and all that stuff? And then I got to the bus station and I never had enough money for the bus. I had to like say to the driver, listen, can you just let me on? And I was like, oh, that's why people are going to work, is for money. That's why. I forgot about that. That's why people aren't just having sex on a fucking Wednesday and strolling home. Do you have any walk of shame stories, Rachel?
Not really. I mean, I feel like the entirety of the Fringe, but everyone's doing such mad shit that...
That's the time when you can blend in. If you're dressed like a Latin or a fucking ringmaster, people wouldn't assume that you just, come back for the night before. They'd just think you're going to work.
There's people, there's all the students who like lie on the Royal Mile and they like hold up their leaflets and as if they're like dead or something like that. Like you could just join them and have a little nap and just be like, oh God, I'm so fucking hungover. No, but do you know what? Like the Fringe, I know that we talk about it all the time on the podcast, but that was the
Edinburgh Festival.
The Edinburgh Festival Fringe 2016 was the best time of just having like so many one night stands, and it was one of those things where I'd not really been having them, and I was just like, oh my God, this is so easy, and it's so was like newly single, and I was just like, out having a really good time, and just like I didn't have in my head anything, like I didn't want anything, I didn't want a relationship. It was that thing of being like, I really, really wanted to just have the experience of one night stands, and it was so good. I think it's so good. Like, I do think everyone just needs to have that experience at some point in their life of just being free to do whatever they want, meet new people, and the excitement of a one night stand, like I miss it so much. Well, maybe not a one night stand. I don't know if I miss like it being a one off or whatever, but I miss the anticipation of being on a night out and then meeting someone and then thinking, am I sensing a vibe? Is this going to be a thing? Like my favourite one night stand was actually, you were there, and it was at the Fringe. And
don't worry, listeners.
It was not,
I wasn't there at the end of the night.
Well, you were actually, but you were in another room. But literally...
Oh, I remember this one, actually. I know, I was thinking about this recently. Because actually, there's something about this. Go on, just tell us. Oh
God, don't say that. But the reason it was so good was because it was like the sun was shining, we were in like a beer garden. And like I went to the toilet and I came back and it was me, you and our friend and you, the guy that you were living with at the Fringe, and we came back and I was on Happen at the time. This was like 5 years ago.
That's the app that it shows you who's nearby you and who you've walked by and stuff.
If you've walked past them, then it shows you them and then you can like swipe and then match. Which was really good at the Fringe because obviously you're like walking about and all this stuff. Anyway, so I came back from the toilet and then you three were all like grinning at me, and it was so weird because I was like, hello, and you were all like giggling and I was like, have I missed something? And it was because I'd matched with the guy that you were living with, and he was like showing his Happen to you guys, and they were like, oh my God, it's Rachel. But that was the perfect time. Like, I think a dating app is only good, well, not only good, but a dating app is good for when you see people that you kind of fancy but you don't know if they fancy you back. Or if it's someone that you meet and then you know that you've matched, and then you're like, well, I know that they liked the look of my pictures. And then you're like, right, at least I kind of know that I'm starting from this level. And then we like had a really good night and like we were all like in like dancing and all that kind of stuff. And you were a really good wingman for me. And it was just a really nice, pure, fun one night stand.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm a better wingman than you even know, right? Because what I don't know if you know about that night is, so you were going home. I made my way home, but I basically got back to the flat before you, right? But I didn't want you to know that I was in, because I was like, oh fuck, that's gonna be awkward. It's because I was sleeping in his living room, and
you said
so
that you were meeting a girl.
I can't remember what I was actually doing that night, but whatever happened, I ended up back at the flat before you. So I think I don't know if I heard you coming or I just assumed you would be back soon. So I just had to turn my lights off and all that and just go to bed so as that, I didn't feel like you weren't too
hey
conscious
guys.
of me being there. So obviously I had to fucking put my earphones in, because that's the last thing I'm fucking listening to, right? When I'm already sleeping on a couch for a fucking month. I'm not listening to you getting fucking rattled, right?
Rattled, Mark. Fuck off. I was doing the rattling.
I know. I could hear it over the fucking podcast now. No,
No, but
turn
you
up
were
the volume on Joe Rogan or whatever the fucking.
Oh my god!
Do you know what I think I done? I said to you that I was going to meet somebody, knowing that I would get back before you, and then I just went to bed.
Yeah, and that was honestly perfect because you just melted away, just disappeared into the background, and then we.
It wasn't a great night for me, to be honest, but. You're
just like rocking, like.
If you can't hear us, it's not happening.
But yeah.
Daddy, are you hurting Mummy? So I do have an embarrassing walk of shame story, by the way.
Yeah, go.
So I was in Liverpool, right? And usually I would just come up and back on the same night if I was in Liverpool or Manchester or something, but I was doing Liverpool and then I was doing a gig in Manchester the following night, so I had to get a place to stay. So I got this wee Airbnb right down by the marina. It was dead nice, pretty cheap, right? But it was in like an old guy's house, right? So it was a wee old guy's house and it was just a room at the top of the house. And he was a lovely guy, right? But he was in his 70s or whatever, and did welcome all the rest of it. But basically I got there, kind of parked my stuff, sat for an hour, and then went to the gig, right? So gig goes well, meet a couple of girls after, right? Went for a drink, a couple of girls, went for a drink with them, was hitting it off with one, so, you know, the pal kind of makes excuses, goes and I go back to the girls, right? So stay over at the lassie's house, and then obviously I'm walking back the next morning, so I've not stayed at the place that I've got the Airbnb for, and the whole time I'm thinking to myself, like, what am I going to say to this old guy? Like, you know, and as I was walking back in the morning, I'm like thinking, like, right, I need to get my story straight, right? I'll just say that I was out, because he knew I was doing a gig, because I think I told him and stuff like that, and I was like, oh, well, I'll just say I met friends and went to a party or something, because I can't even be pure high-fiving this, like, 75-year-old guy, like, I fucking was shagging last night, mate, do you know what I mean? I can't even do that, right? I don't know, this guy's probably a widower or some shit like that. I don't know why I pure make him.
Did you know his name, Mark?
I knew his name. Like,
what was his name?
I'm not going to say it in the pod. I can't remember now, but
like Hector or Archie.
He's an old guy, but honestly, right. So, but here's what happened. Right, so I was trying to get my story started. Right, what am I going to tell him? Right, so I'm walking back on the street. Right, and I get to his door, and before I can really get my story straight, I see him, and he's out in the front garden, like he's doing the gardening or something. And he was like, "Mark, I never heard you leave this morning." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, I just went out a walk."
You're like, you.
Because I can't be like, I've not been home, mate. Do you know what I mean? Like, I can't even
check the bed sheets, still mate.
Party animal, mate. You know what I mean? Yeah, well, exactly right. So that is actually what I feel bad about, because I came in, right, and he was dead nice, made me breakfast. Not, you know, Airbnb, you don't actually get a B&B, right? But he pure made me my breakfast, sat toast, and he was like, this dead cool guy, used to be in trade unions. He was telling me all his political stuff he used to be involved with back in the day in Liverpool and all that, right? And he's just talking to me, but occasionally, right, he would drop in like, you know, he's like, it's no job for a man, that is it, you know, changing the sheets, I need to do all that stuff. And he was like, it was almost as if he was hinting that he knew I hadn't been there, because he was like, you know, I just need to change the sheets and that for the next person. And I was so choking to be like, mate, I've been out all night. Do you know what I mean? I can't, like, and I was so, and I got the vibe he was like quite an open-minded guy for like an old guy his age, and I was like, I feel like I could have told him, but you know that way with the reviews, and you know, it's just
with the reviews. Is that all you're thinking?
Aye, because I wanted, like, you know what I was saying about like guys like getting all the pure praise if they were. I wanted to be like, yes, mate, high five. Do you know what I mean? Like, in your age, I'm sort of like tell him, but because we were getting on that, but I was still just like, nah, I'm not going to say. So I just never said.
But you know what? That's
I should
bad.
have left it in the review. Why?
Do you know, it's bad, and I know why he was hinting about the sheets, and I think you should feel terrible. Is he had no reason to change those sheets, and you made him change those sheets by not telling him.
But
that's why he was hinting. He just wanted to double check. By the way, should I change these sheets? And you didn't tell him. He's labouring over those sheets, Mark.
I just honestly was so. I would have just felt so bad. I'd have been like telling my granda or something that I was shagging. Like I just was so awkward. I know I felt bad. I shouldn't, but it was just that weird awkward situation. And then like,
I'm bad with
you know,
Mark, don't worry.
No, but But the thing is see with Airbnb, like fucking everything these days, it's like you need everybody gives each other ratings and stuff like that. And it's like, imagine I said to him, and then he was like pure appalled because he was like,
He got your money.
or whatever. He got my money, but like, and I felt bad because he was so hospitable, and I hadn't actually stayed at his place. So that is definitely that's the time when I've really felt the most shame, or any shame really, walking back the night.
Oh, really?
Other than when I would stow it into, my parents and, just have to sort of slink up the stairs and go, right.
So bad.
Where have you been? Doesn't matter. Don't worry about it.
I know. I'm trying to think with parents. I think that I can't remember doing it. I think maybe I've like sneaked someone in once or twice, but I don't think that they ever knew. Well, they must have. I think they must have known. But
if you don't come back from a night out, do you need to send them a text or something? And
so I used to have to send them a text. So I would literally just text them at like 4 a.m, being like, "Hey, Mum, staying at Rowan's," and then my mum's like, "She's not staying at Rowan's."
Yeah, 100%.
It's so awkward when parents like know, like you both know that that we both know that they know, and then you're just like, but I'm just gonna pretend that you don't,
Yeah, I know. It was them one time. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here.
Let's not think about that.
This is probably my first one night stands. Right, I was 17 and I went to Magaluf, right, with all my mates. Right, first lads holiday and all that sort of stuff. One of the last nights we're in BCM, which is a big nightclub in Magaluf, right? Mm-hmm. For those of you that are classy enough to go to these types of places, all right. And at some point during the night, this girl, right, across the dance floor just like points at me, right? And it's like, "You, come here," right? So I'm like, "Me?" I'm like, look behind me, and it was me. And she's like, "You, come here," right? So I walk over, right? And then it's her and her pal standing there, and she goes like that. "Do you think my pal's good looking, right?" And she was, so I was like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Do you want to go down the beach and have sex with her?" And I was like, "Yeah." I was like, and that was it. And so basically that girl had found a guy that she was going to go and shag on the beach, and she needed a pal to come with her, so the pal needed some guy to go with her. So we went down to the beach and
that's perfect.
Had sex, and it was great, right? But I thought, I've often thought to myself, that would never work the other way around. And God knows I have fucking tried, okay? Now, but do you know what I mean? It's not the same.
It still happens, Mark. It just would.
The chances of that, yeah.
Guys come up and go.
No, I'm not. I don't doubt the guys try it. I'm just saying
it's unwanted.
The fucking success rate must be fucking minimal, I would say.
I know. Oh my God, though. Was it weird having sex on the beach? Was it awkward because of the
do you know what is the weirdest part about it? Right, I mean, I was 17, right, so I was obviously fucking, I didn't know what the fuck was going on, really. Yeah. But the weirdest part about it was there was just guys that were kicking about the beach, and they were coming up to her and going, "Use our shagging," and all that. Although it was basically the time before smartphones, really, certainly before most people had like one with a camera and all that. So like nowadays, you probably can't get away with that stuff as much. Whereas then it was just like, nobody's the fucking paparazzi like everybody is now. But there was just two guys kicking up at the beach going, "Use our fucking shagging," and all that. It was embarrassing.
God, that's so embarrassing.
Yeah.
A time that I had a thing with this guy, and he was Swedish, right? And he was called Gustav. And
strong Swedish name.
Yeah, and he was a proper like beautiful hipster. Like he was really cool, really liked to style, and he was really like genuinely. I think he was like a video designer, so he lived in London, but he'd come up to Glasgow and he was staying in Glasgow for 2 weeks. So it was perfect because he.
You've really narrowed this guy down. It'll be easy to fucking find him with this information. We don't usually use names, to be fair. I don't know why.
I know. Sorry. It was this. No, it wasn't.
That's alright, fuck it. Gustav, if you're listening.
Gustav got married, I think, or got engaged the other day, so congratulations, Gustav.
Yeah, that'll last when this fucking comes out.
No, it's not bad. He was really nice. So we had the date, but I didn't really want it to end, but I had to go to my friend's birthday party. So I ended up like bringing him, which was probably like a shit thing to do. In hindsight, of being like, "Hey, I brought my Tinder date who I've just met tonight."
Why do you think why was it a bad thing to do to take him to the party?
Well, he wasn't invited, was he? Like, and it was like not that many people. I know, but it was like
you showing off? Were you like, "Look at my big fucking hunky Swedish blonde"? I assume he's blonde.
He was kind of blonde, hunk? Yeah. It wasn't that. It was that I didn't want to end the night with him. But I mean, it wasn't like a party. Like I think it was maybe pre-drinks to then go on a night out. So it wasn't really that vibe of like party.
Right.
So then we went, and it was one of those things where I was like, hey, like, here he is. And they were all like, okay. But actually it was fine. And then we were all pre-drinking, and it was when my friend was living at home. So we were drinking there. And then we got a taxi to go into town, and we all went on a night out, still with this Swedish guy, right? And then on the way to the taxi, I just was like, I've lost my phone. And it's one of those things where it's awkward when you're with someone that you don't really know, because you're trying not to freak out, but at the same time I was like, oh fuck. So, and also we were quite drunk. It was maybe about midnight. We were trying to get into a club that was really hard to get into. So it was all just very stressful. And he was really lovely. And he was like, right, well, you know, we can go back. So we ended up getting a taxi back to my friend's house. They went into the club. We had to go, I had to like chat to her.
I'm sure he was
mum.
gutted about that, having to leave all your fucking mates.
It worked out perfectly. And then, but then it was so awkward because I was like my friend's mum, and I had to like wake them up, and they were like in their pajamas, and I was like, I'm so sorry, I just wanted to check if I've left my phone, like it must be in like under the sofa. So we're like, me and this guy are like searching for my phone. I'm like trying not to get upset about it. I'm trying to be like, no, it's cool, it's fine. I'm like poor as fuck, and I couldn't afford a new phone, so I was like, shit. So we couldn't find the phone, right? It wasn't anywhere in the house, and we were like honestly looking everywhere, and it definitely wasn't there. And it was so embarrassing because we'd like woken up the household and all this. It was really bad. So then we had to pay money to go back into town. All my friends were in the club. It was like really awkward. I was like, I'm too upset to do this. I was just like, I can't really do it. And he was like, well, you know, I have a hotel in town if you want to like come back to mine. And I was like, yeah, I'll come back to yours, but I was still kind of upset about my phone. So I like go to his hotel, right? And we go in, and it also feels funny when you go to a hotel because you're like, it's like for one person. So then when you go in, everyone's pure judging you, which is bad.
Well, sometimes there's certain hotels that are pure strict. Like I've actually had to fucking pay extra before to go back to somebody's hotel because it's a fucking Premier Inn or whatever doesn't let you do that. And then I think the nicer the hotel is, the less they give a fuck. But you never quite know whether you're going to get into trouble or not if you go back to somebody's and you're not meant to be there.
Yeah, you're like that. Oh, sorry. And so like this whole night as well, this whole time I have to say, like we were like ringing the phone, everyone was phoning, like 6 people were ringing my phone, and I was like really upset about it. So we go into the hotel, and we're like going, and I'm like, right, Rachel, just like chill out. So we start kissing, and it gets very passionate, and then like he takes off my top, and then he takes off my bra, and my phone just fell out of my bra, and it had been like in my bra the whole time. I was like, oh, I was so happy. I didn't even feel the vibration or anything, and I was just like, oh, fuck's sake. So that was a really happy ending to the story. And then I shagged
in more
him.
ways than one by the sounds of it. Well, if anyone out there wants to try and find Gustav with all the information Rachel's giving you about him, please do find him. And then
I mean, I'm still friends with him. I'm sure he'll I mean, you know,
just
that's the
send
funny
him a
thing.
Thank you note. Say thank you for finding Rachel's phone and her tits. So this last submission we've got came from a guy who basically he went to the football, which explains because he was wearing he talks about wearing long johns. So I presume he was wearing them to kind of keep warm under his trousers. So he went to the football during the day, and then he ended up going out in Glasgow after it, and he went to the Cat House in Glasgow. And from there, the rest of the events transpired.
We rocked into the Catty. There was literally hardly anybody there, and there was a fine young lady there that incidentally I followed on Facebook, but we didn't know each other. So anyway,
can I say already sounds a bit suspect to be honest, but
I love the image of him. He like just wandered into the Catty, just like owning the nightclub.
also, like, it's the sort of place that you could go clearly not dressed for the occasion, to be honest. Like, I'm sure that there's nothing nefarious about the fact that he followed her.
I'm glad he said on the Facebook. I was like, followed.
yeah, that sentence could have ended a lot worse. But anyway, so they had each other, so that happens sometimes. You've got somebody in social media and then you meet them in real life. That's fair enough. So we'll see where it goes from here.
As it goes, we ended up kind of chatting to each other and pulled her and whatnot, and I was like, do you want to come back to my flat? I was very conscious at this point I've got these long johns on, so I didn't want her to see them. So we got into the flat, and I said to her, I was like, do you want to just go into my room? I'll make us some tea next. We were absolutely blazing, and we didn't want to drink anymore. So she went into the bedroom. I came into my living room, and naturally I wear quite skinny jeans. So I thought, like, I need to wrestle these off. So I'm trying to take my skinny jeans off, and in the process, I fell through a rather large glass table. Now, the sound of it was like a shotgun, and it instantly sobered me right up. So I'm sitting in amongst all this shards of glass, thinking, fuck man, this should be really, really painful, but it wasn't painful. So anyway, I got up, I stood up very, very carefully, and then blood just started spraying out my hand. So I thought, God. So I don't know how much time had passed here, but basically at this point I'm in my pants. So I took my kind of bottom of my jeans off and that, and I'm in my wee white pants. And then I walked into the room, and she's like, oh my God, what happened? What was that noise? And I was like, well, I had a wee bit of an accident actually. And blood is literally kind of pouring or spraying out my hand at this point. So I was like, well, I'm just going to go into the bathroom and clean it up. So she followed me in, and she's like, your arse is bleeding. So these wee white pants that I had on obviously had a bit of glass stuck in my arse. So we ended up, she had to pick the glass out my bum, and we sat and drank cups of tea, and I just kind of sat there with a throbbing finger. Just a throbbing finger, by the way. And yeah, that was that.
I love that man. Like, that was like just the way he was like, just my finger, mind.
Just a throbbing finger, by the way. That was all it was throbbing that night. Sounds like I made a throbbing arse as well, by the sounds of it. Again, not quite in the way that you would normally want, you know.
Oh my God, that was so... I mean, that's nice though. I think that sex injuries are a real thing, by the way, because we got sent a lot of submissions of people either like having sex and then a guy's like banjo string is like snapped and there's blood everywhere, or we got sent things of people like someone accidentally getting like locked in a room and then the person was really claustrophobic and freaking out and all this kind of stuff. Like, I think that it's interesting because sex is so intimate, but actually like injuring yourself is quite intimate as well. So like having that together means that, like, you know, sitting having a cup of tea if you've like had an injury or like had shock, you're meant, actually this is a good piece of advice, see if you do have an injury and go into shock, you're meant to have a very sugary cup of tea because your like insulin levels like drop or something like that. But it is that thing of like having that little communal moment of then you must bond. It's like that kind of Florence Nightingale nurse thing, isn't it, of being like, you have that moment.
It's one thing to not text somebody back after a one night stand, but if you don't text them back after they fell through a table, then there's something wrong with you. Alright, there's no excuse for that.
Where is the duty of care there? That's what I have to say.
I'm glad you brought that up actually, because
oh no,
we were talking earlier on about a duty of care, right? Your argument was that if you sleep with someone, you have a duty of care to text them back. Okay? Now, you know the story I'm going to tell, because you know who it is.
Yep.
I went on a date. Had a couple of drinks, went back to their place. We had a lovely evening together. One night stand, right? Stayed over.
Yep.
Next day I was going to work, so I walked to work, and I felt like there was a sort of mutual feeling that it was going to be a one thing and that was it. But because I know that I have a duty of care, I text just saying, oh, I had a nice night, blah blah blah, hope your day is good or whatever. No text back. No text back. I was ghosted after a one night stand. I was pumped and dumped, Rachel. I was pumped. And then I was dumped. I never heard back from him again. No courtesy reply. Nada. Right? And the thing that was annoying for me of that, because it was like I was just sending that text out of the quote unquote duty of care to be nice. Even though I was in the same boat, but because I sent it and then never got the reply, it's like I've been spurned, you know? I was like I've been the person that's like...
Did you get a taste of your own medicine, maybe?
No, because I wouldn't do that. I'm not saying that I would actually like just like dinging them completely.
You're saying you have never done that in your life?
Probably, I don't know. But I would say that generally I try and not be an arsehole about it, right? Like, I'm sure I must have at some point, right? But there's a difference, though. I would say this is a difference between just not texting somebody again if they text you, then not texting them back. That's the difference, right? I don't think I've done that to my recollection. Could be wrong. But what I'm saying is, it was funny.
We're going to get our first emails.
Yeah, we're going to get, a lot of responses. But I would say that it was funny, because it was a weird situation to be in as a guy, right? Because all of a sudden I'm going like, oh, I can't believe this, Next, and I tell you what, see the next person that I met, I made them wait. I made them wait a month to even kiss me, because I'm like, listen, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me, okay? But it was a funny role reversal, because you're like, all of a sudden you go, huh? Not even a text back. It's like she just used me. Am I just a piece of meat to you? Is that what it is?
Yeah. So why are you aiming this at me, Mark?
Because it was your pal.
I know it was my pal.
Maybe you should have a word with her about your duty of care.
Well, oh God.
I think the difference between how good a pal I was for you with that story at the Fringe, and then how good a pal.
I know.
If you're a good a pal, you should have a word.
good pal. Well, I feel like I need to address something that I've never addressed before.
Okay, before you do that, can I also point out why this story is also relevant to the submission?
Mm-hmm.
Also, that night, which I didn't even really remember that, because it was mainly the text thing was in my head. But that night also, when I stayed over at hers, she had no pillows for me, which, is
she had no pillow, like Mark Jennings pillows.
I tell you what, if that was an Airbnb, I'd about a fucking 0-star review, right? The guy in Liverpool's got all the pillows, I didn't even fucking need them. Then I'm staying at hers and she's got fuck all for me.
Was she not washing them or something?
I don't know, I can't remember, to be honest. But that night I ended up talking about injuries and that. So like I had a kind of weird shoulder for ages anyway. And then basically after that night it got so much worse, and I ended up like, it was so sore, and it ended up deteriorating to the point I barely could lift it, and I had to go to the physio, all that sort of stuff. It was adding, the no text back was adding insult to literal injury, right?
Yes. I'm going to say something, but you have to promise not to fall out with me.
Fair enough.
So I knew that this was going on, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was hearing from you and I was hearing from my friend, right? So she said to me, I think that this is not going to be a thing. I think that we're both in the same boat. Like you said, I think we're both in the same boat. I'm pretty sure that it was a one-off thing. So, just going to leave it, right?
Yeah.
And then she said that you texted her and she was like, so I'll reply. And I was like, well, you might not necessarily need to, because you had been behaving badly, and I thought it would be a taste of your own medicine if she didn't reply.
The hypocrisy of Rachel Graham is here for everyone. All
Honestly,
listeners
Mark,
to this podcast. The Rachel Duty of Care Graham herself advised her friend not to give a duty of care text to me.
You, who was, having a lot of people running
Sorry,
around
by
after
bad
you.
behaviour, can you just clarify what you mean? Shagging other year pals, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, and
That's not that bad.
And also like them being like expecting things, and then you just like being like bye. So you kind of been like that.
Okay, but whether or not that's the case, I would have definitely sent them a courtesy text. And
Would you though?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
You wouldn't have been like, listen, you'd be like, oh, I'm fizzling this out, or you'd be like, oh, I'm not into it, I'm just leaving it. But then they never knew.
There's a difference.
They'd come to me, Mark. They'd come to me.
I did not
like,
sleep with any of them, and then they sent me a text going, I had a really nice night, and then I just never texted them back.
Yeah,
I never at one point
you might have
done
slept with them many times and then been like, well, it's casual and I'm just leaving it. And then they'd come to me and go, what do you think Mark Jennings is thinking? And I'd go, I know exactly what Mark Jennings is thinking. So I thought this would be a perfect taste of your own medicine.
You used to wind me up about it, which is funny because now I realise that the only reason it happened is because you're the fucking perpetrator of.
It is bad, actually. I am sorry, but at the same time, it's not her fault. It's my fault, is what I'm trying to say.
That makes sense. I feel like it's really for the listeners to decide whether or not you're right or wrong to do that.
I'm getting cancelled because I've been a horrible friend.
I think that is a wee bit uncalled for, but
I think it's bad. I am sorry, but I am just putting my hands up now and saying that You know, it wasn't her being a dick. It was me being like, well, do you know what? He's used to being the one who leaves, so maybe you don't need to text back if you both are on the same page.
I do feel in the spirit of sharing, right, Rachel, I should probably tell you something I've never told you, right, is that, see, every one of my pals you've shagged that never text you back, that was because I told them to do that as well.
Oh, God.
They all actually really liked you, it's just that, you know, I just said don't, just because, you know, she needs to learn. She needs to learn to make them wait.
In the reality.
Until she starts making people wait a month to kiss her. Don't even bother. I think that more or less covers one night stands. The one thing left to say, right, because obviously there is a certain, I suppose, emptiness when it comes to a one night stand, right? It's like, we spoke about fun times and it's always a good laugh and all the rest of it, right? And it's like, there's no judgment if that's how you want to live your life and all that sort of stuff. But I feel like, I do feel, particularly in the last couple of years, you know, you have enough of them and it gets to a point where it does feel a bit repetitive and a bit empty and a bit, you know, like you're just looking for the validation or something. I suppose it's a bit like any vice, right? Whether it's like food or drink or drugs or something. It's like, you know, it can be a lot of fun for a while, you know, but it's not really going to fill that, you know, hole inside of you. Or it might temporarily, right? But it's not going to, not for the, like, metaphorically speaking, it's not going to fill that void, right? Like, it's the same way you can't go looking for happiness at the bottom of a pint glass, like, or a line of Coke. Like, you're not going to fulfill it getting inside of someone's pants as well, right? So I think it's worth mentioning that, well, it's a lot of fun and it's something that I think is probably should have a wee bit less stigma than is attached to it. It's also worth noting that obviously I think there is a law of diminishing returns at a certain point where it gets to a point where maybe you're looking for something a bit more meaningful and all of that sort of thing. And, you know, it's sometimes if you're pursuing it just for the sake of it itself, then it is going to be a bit of a sort of never-ending journey. And actually, sometimes you need to, I don't know, sometimes it's maybe worth looking for something more. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think that if I think about how I kind of used them before, so much of it is validation. So much of it is like, you know, low self-esteem and being like, oh my God, but if they're really good looking and then if they like me, then that makes me good looking or whatever the thing is. And I think that that's something that like I've learned is that kind of thing of like being like, it doesn't matter. Like, I know it's that cliche, but it actually doesn't matter what someone thinks of you. It's like how you feel about yourself and working on like loving yourself before having to be like, oh, I really need a guy to fancy me for me to feel attractive.
Totally. I think I was the same. Like, it's like when I was younger, like, you know, get dumped by this lassie I'd really liked and then almost like an overcompensation. Well, I'm going to go and, you know, have sex with all of these people to, you know, prove that, you know, I'm lovable or something like that. And to be honest, I don't actually always think it's the worst idea in the world if you get dumped or something like that to go and meet other people and have some experiences, just because it makes you realise that, you know, there's other people out there. But at the same time, you don't want to do it at the point where you're constantly seeking that validation of your own self-esteem. So it's one of those things where you don't want to root your happiness in it, basically. Although it can be obviously fun, and I think that, you know, there's a place for it like everything else, like everything in moderation, including moderation. But you know, it's going to get to the point where, like, if you're doesn't matter how long your iPhone notes list is, right? it's not going to compensate for it.
We're becoming more aware, like, you know, there's TV programs of things of people being like having sex and having one night stands, and that it's slowly becoming more accepted. And I think that like you say, it's that thing of being like, just do it for the right reason. Like, I don't think that there should be a time limit. I don't think when you hit 30 you should stop having one night stands. You know, you could be with someone for 20 years, between like 20 and 40, and then you do it and then you want to go and have those experiences. There's no age limit. It's just that thing of making sure that you're doing it for the right reason for you. And I've found that too, of just being like, I've really been thinking like, I've had enjoyable experiences, but it's not really what I'm looking for anymore. And just being kind of aware of being like, if I want to have a one night stand, there's no judgment on me, there's no shame on me, especially as a woman. Like, I'm not thinking, oh my God, you're a slut or whatever if you're going out and having sex with one person, you know, or however many. The number doesn't matter. And I think that really needs, like, I really wish I could go back to me when I was in 2017, pure upset that I'd slept with like more than 10 people. And it's that thing of being like, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't. And like, you just need to do what's right with you. And it's that kind of thing of like, we've got such a thing in our society of like branding people as things. And it's like, no, we're just existing and having experiences. And that can be whatever's right for you. Some people have a high school sweetheart who they're with forever and that's what makes them happy. And some people don't want to have that or whatever. It's just do whatever makes you happy and no judgment on debating dating.
I certainly don't think it's worth using one night stands or sexual gratification or whatever it is as a way to compensate for your own happiness. And I think if you are doing that, and I think I've been guilty of it, it's worth looking at what you're really wanting, like what will really make you happy, and whether that's just accepting yourself as you are or working to improve yourself in some way, or a mixture of both, which is probably what I think I need to do. Then doing those things, because rather than trying to use sex or relationships or whatever to paper over the cracks of, you know, the things that you don't like about yourself, you're unhappy about in your own life. So I feel like that's probably worth mentioning at the end of this episode. I've really enjoyed it. It's been a good fun one. And if you would like to be more than a one night stand for us,
oh my God,
if you'd like to see us again, you the listener at home, if you'd like to have another date with Debating Dating, we're here every Wednesday. No, if you have enjoyed this episode, please do remember to give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts /iTunes. Do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts, and we are available in video version on YouTube.
And if you'd like to slide into our DMs, then you can send us a little message on our Instagram @debatingdating. If you want to send us any submissions, ask us to talk about anything in particular, any questions, things you want us to cover, then feel free to send us a wee message, or you can send us an email at debatingdatingpod@gmail.com.
So, thanks very much for listening, and we'll speak to you soon.
Bye!